What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Legends of Tomorrow, Season 5, Episode 1 or 2. I don't really know. Honestly, I'm not even sure how I'm going to label it whenever I upload this video, because technically it's the first episode of the season, but if you look on Netflix, it's Episode 2, because they called the crossover event episode the first one. I think I'm going to call this Episode 1, though, because this is the first complete Legends of Tomorrow episode, but this is Meet the Legends. The whole documentary crew thing, couldn't really get into it, so it kind of made it a mixed bag for me, because there were some things that were enjoyable in this, but the whole premise of it just seemed kind of dumb. And it seemed, I mean, obviously this show has had a lot of fun with the whole idea of time travel, so it's not one meant to be taken seriously. It's not a show where it's just like, oh, they're taking cameras back then? What are they, that's a terrible idea, it could ruin everything. Like, clearly this show has not taken itself too seriously when it comes to possibly changing time, like bringing Rasputin a camera crew that he could film himself on. Obviously, this is not that type of show where we have to be worried about the consequences of that. However, even with that in mind, this still seems a little excessive as far as how stupid it all seems. Like, really, bringing a camera crew, not just to see Rasputin, but then also when so many of them are trying to kill or basically rewrite time, it just seems really weird that they're like, yeah, let's bring the camera crew along, and then they just leave them there. It's kind of dumb. So, yeah, I couldn't get behind that idea. I couldn't really find it that interesting. So I was always sort of on the edge of enjoying certain scenes, because there were moments when I did start to enjoy myself, but then all of a sudden the camera crew would pop up, or the documentary idea would pop back up again, and I'd just kind of be taken out of the moment. So a little unfortunate with that. Um, there's another part of this that I'm still not sure how to feel about, because if the ending is implying what I think it's implying, then it may be the best thing about this episode. If not, then it's kind of a false flag, and it's going to piss me off even more. I think Mona might be off the show. Maybe? I mean, I hope so. Just, obviously, that's probably me. I don't know how many people actually liked Mona. To me, she just seemed very stupid and annoying and not a good actress. Like, she was not good. In this first part of the season, this first episode, she was not good. Like, she was really basically the same. Like, she seems like she's just trying to act, and she's not doing it well. And some people may call that harsh. As somebody who has acted a lot before, I can generally judge whether or not I find somebody's performance believable, and she never once delivers anything with any conviction. Like, all of her stuff is just always so cringy to watch, because it always feels like she's trying to put on this performance, and she's all, ooh, I'm so happy and quirky, and don't you just love me because I'm so quirky? And just never comes off as believable. And then when she has to do some more serious scenes, there's just nothing there. Like, there's no emotion at all. So she might be leaving to become the new Rebecca Silver, and if so, great, get her off the freaking Wave Rider. I don't want to see her anymore. Her story last season was not interesting. Her powers are not that interesting. It's just all of her I just wanted off the show. So if that's what they're implying by this ending, then thank you. Like, the writers, I don't know if they got a bunch of hate on Mona and they're just like, we just need to write her off the show or what. But I really, really hope this means she's done. Fingers crossed. If she's not, then it'll probably be even more upsetting, because they made me think that she was leaving and then she didn't actually leave. The stuff with Nate, kind of intrigued to see what they're going to do with that this season, because obviously with Zari no longer around, and I guess this is her brother, I think. I don't know if we actually ever confirmed, because that's the thing, I don't remember what she said her brother's name was, like the one that I think died young. I don't remember if she said his name, or I don't know. I don't remember much of that story, but I just remember when they changed history last season at Hayworld, suddenly now this guy was in her place and he had the totem instead. So I'm assuming this is her brother that was not in the picture, and she took over as the totem bearer. So, but I didn't really know what to expect from that. Wasn't sure if they were just sort of going to move on. And it was, I did find it funny. There were a few times that they did poke some fun, where Nate is talking about, like, he just feels like something's missing. And then Ray had a really good line when he first came back. The whole, I feel like we're missing somebody, with Bayrod standing right there. And you know what they're implying. And he's like, oh yeah, Charlie, where's Charlie? So I thought that was pretty funny. And Ray probably for me was the funniest out of everybody. Like, he had some of the best lines, and that ending definitely captured some of the dark humor elements in this show. To just go inside of Rasputin as tiny Ray, and then just expand and explode him from inside. Uh, it's funny. Obviously I've talked about in some of the other shows the things that have made me relate to Marvel stuff. Obviously, What If came out after this, but it did make me think of the wasp flying inside of zombie Sharon's mouth and then expanding and blowing her up from the inside. I did have that thought here, but I'm like, but they didn't rip that off from What If, because What If came after. It's just, my mind is probably still so focused on Marvel right now, because Marvel is doing such great things, that it just tends to relate most of this DC stuff back to Marvel. Because unfortunately, they're doing a lot of stuff a lot better than DC at the moment. But as far as like I said, as far as the Zari thing, I don't know what they're going to do with it. Nate seeing a projection of her at the end, and apparently she's like, you're not going to remember me, so come find me. I don't know what that means. I don't know if she still even exists in this new timeline, and if she does, is she going to remember anything? Is she going to even have like a fragment of memory? I don't know. On top of that, the whole storyline with whatever Astra is doing, releasing these souls of these evil people. Already we've seen Rasputin. I don't know who else we're going to see throughout this season, but it does get me excited, because we are going to probably be revisiting a lot of very evil and dark, disturbed people on a show that tends to handle things a lot more goofily, but they have their dark humor elements as well. So I feel like I'm excited to see how they're gonna show some of the takes on these very popular, probably evil people from history, and really what they're planned to do. A lot of this stuff. I don't know. I'm excited to see what they've got planned. As far as Sarah and Ava are concerned, I mean, their relationship has just kind of been okay. This episode kind of did that whole, and I figured whenever they were going to have a documentary series-esque episode, I figured they would have a couple Office-type jokes where it's like, oh, I'm going to get her condolence card. And then as she's walking in with her condolence card, Sarah and Bayrod are talking. She's like, oh, is that a condolence card? Oh, no, nothing that lame. Oh, thank goodness. I hate those. As she's walking in with it. And she's like, oh, yeah, I mean, we don't need this. It's that type of joke that you expect to see in a show like this. They didn't do the one I expected to see, though, where they're filming somebody and they're like, oh, I would never do that, and then cut to them doing whatever they said they wouldn't do. They didn't do that one. I was a little surprised for that. But, yeah, I mean, there's just kind of they sometimes will throw this little wrench into Ava and Sarah's relationship, and then by the end of it, they're fine. I don't know why. You could just have them be happy together. Honestly, I kind of prefer whenever they're just going on missions separate, because whenever they're on missions together, it does sort of feel like their relationship takes a lot of focus away. So I really like it whenever they're just, Ava's doing her thing. Obviously, I don't really think the Time Bureau is a thing anymore, but I kind of prefer whenever they're not working together on a mission, because it seems like they do better as far as missions are concerned separately. Whenever they're together, there just seems to be that they're constantly worried about the other, and so I feel like they're not at the top of their game whenever they're both on the same mission. So I would kind of like to see maybe them separate for missions, and then you can still bring them together, outside of missions and stuff like that. But I am worried that they're going to keep having these moments where they're on a mission and suddenly things go wrong and they have relationship issues in the middle of the mission that need to be fixed. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what they decide to do with that this season. Maybe they won't have a lot of moments like that, but it seems more often than not that tends to be the case, is that they end up in some sort of debacle because they're working on the same mission and they argue and they're like, oh, I just can't believe you do such a thing and blah, blah, blah. So, but as far as, Sarah's plight, I do want to see more of that. I do want to see more of what she's dealing with after the crisis, because she does have a moment where she sort of breaks down and says, I wanted to talk to all of you about this, but I come back and I'm meted with cameras in my face. So it is kind of an interesting thing that I hope they talk about a bit more. I hope they really delve into more of what she's going through. But at the same time, this isn't really a show where they do a whole lot of character development, so they'll probably make some jokes, maybe have a couple more moments where she does talk about what the crisis meant to her and losing Oliver meant to her. But I just wanted a couple more scenes in this episode, but of course we had to focus more on the documentary and stopping Rasputin. So, but I think that's about all of the storylines for this. There's a lot of different moving pieces. I don't know. It's just some of them were interesting, some of them were just kind of happening, and I was watching it happen. So it's kind of a weird mixture. But for the first episode so far, a bit better. I mean, it definitely better than most of what I saw last season. And again, if Mona's off the show, then it'll definitely be better than last season, because she's really what dragged it down for me. I mean, even just in this one episode, she goes, because she wants to give Rasputin a love letter, because he just needs to be with the Tsarina guys. So, that being said, that's about it for the first episode. On to the second one. See you there. And now, episode 2. Again, confused because it says episode 3, but it's episode 2. Miss Me, Kiss Me, Love Me. Pretty good. And again, part of it is because Mona's not here, so I'm back to enjoying the show, back to having more fun, because there's nothing in it that's making me facepalm or get frustrated or say, God, she's awful. So, yeah, I mean, it was overall pretty good. Again, another evil guy returned from the dead, this time 1940s gangster. And I love, I don't know, just the feel that they really went with, the noir, the classic noir. It's just, I don't know, so much fun. The opening, like I don't even really know what to call it, but the opening theme, I guess. Again, because Marvel, it just made me think of like Spider-Man, like the newer ones with Tom Holland, like that kind of paper style. I don't know, did anyone else feel that way? I don't know if this is like the new theme for this season, but that's just what I could think of, is like that. They had it for the ending credits of, I think, all 3 Spider-Man movies, is that like kind of unfolding the paper and like creating stuff looking like it's all just drawn onto paper and then opened and stuff. I don't know how to explain it really, but I mean, did anybody else feel like they were just ripping off the Spider-Man movies, or is that just me? Like, that's really what I got out of it, but whatever. But no, I really like the feel of this episode, like them going into the detective agency and the lady that showed up, the classic kind of damsel in distress feel, and then the gangster who's just come back from the dead and realize, violence, alcohol, all of that, who cares? Information is what really gives you power. And I mean, it is a good message, because I mean, look at the world right now. The people who are controlling the information have all the power. So they can tell us what is and isn't misinformation, even if that's not necessarily true, but they control everything. So yeah, suddenly now what's considered true or false is all based on what they're telling everyone and what their fact checkers are saying. So very interesting relation, I guess, to what's going on currently. But yeah, I mean, I liked all the different moving pieces. I like the fact that Constantine is very involved in this season. He was involved in last season, but there were a couple times where it felt like he was pushed a little bit more to the side. He wasn't, I don't know, he had his moments, obviously, because the demon from last season was directly tied to him. But there were a couple times where it felt like they didn't utilize him as much as I wanted them to. This season, they're definitely really putting more focus on him, and they're integrating him more into the team as well, and I feel like that's what I'm really enjoying about it so far, because last season was just kind of butting heads. He didn't want to be a part of the team. He was a lone wolf. He still is doing that, but he's working alongside them a bit more this season, and I really enjoy those scenes because he really plays well off of everyone, especially him and Ray. I think is the best pairing, because he's just so dark and grim and has a negative outlook on the world, whereas Ray is all positive and happy-go-lucky, and he wants everybody to see the world in the light way that he does. So putting them together definitely has a lot of fun moments. But before I talk about some of the stuff with Bugsy and everything that happened, first talk about Nate and Zari, because Nate just coincidentally gets brought along for Bayrod with Bayrod to meet his family, and Zari is there, which of course very coincidental because why would Bayrod just suddenly out of nowhere, hey, you want to come meet my family because I need an explanation and you can pretend to be my professor? It just felt kind of forced, and then I don't know, everything to do with Zari, I'm still curious to see what they're doing with it, but it did feel very much like we're really forcing this in. Like, oh, guys, can you believe they're going to see Zari? And there's a chance she might remember stuff, but no, she was just tricking them. But then all of a sudden, they show her the Wave Rider at the end of this episode. Because we need to push the story along, I guess. And I don't know if they're going to somehow give her memories back. Because, I mean, honestly, Nate doesn't even really remember her. He just is having these moments where he's sort of flashing back to the past timeline. But nobody knows who Zari is, really. So I don't know how they're going to really talk about this, how they're going to explain this, and I guess what they're going to do with her character. Like, are they going to bring her back onto the Wave Rider? Is she going to... Because, I mean, her brother's using the totem, so she's not going to be the totem user. They can't both do it. So I don't really know what the plan is for her. I don't know if they're going to bring her back or what. And honestly, I didn't think it would be this early either. If they were going to bring her back on, if they were going to talk about her again, I didn't think it would be the second episode in after last season. It just seems very quick for me. But I mean, like I said, I'm curious. I want to know more. So they've got me interested at least. But yeah, everything to do with Bugsy. Really, really good stuff. Just even aside from the feel and the look and the music and all of that, a lot of really funny moments. At first, I wasn't really sure how I felt about what Ava and Mick were doing. It felt kind of like they were pushing Ava to the side and they were going to create a rift because, oh, Sarah doesn't trust me to be in the field. She's just putting me on the ship with Mick Rory. But it actually was a good story because, first of all, we see it's not that. It's just more she's feeling down about herself because she was in charge of the Time Bureau and now she's just a member of the team. And that step down is really affecting her. But the scene where she's on stage, perfect. Just absolutely perfect. Because when they started and she was singing Poison, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, this is it's not a modern song, but it's a more modern song than the 40s. So how does the band know it? How do the backup singers know it? Like, this seems very odd. And she could just, like, sing perfectly now. Like, where did this come from? It's... because they really got me, because they did about 20 seconds of it, of her singing and everybody dancing and clapping and all. And then I just hear people booing, and I'm just like, wait a minute, what are they booing? I mean, it sounded pretty good. Are they just unhappy because it's modern day music? And they cut to her just drunkenly, I can always poison. Oh man, that was a brilliant reveal, just to show what's actually happening and not what's happening in her mind. Ooh, that got me laughing pretty good. So, but yeah, everything to do with Constantine and Astra, all of that is very interesting and engaging, because really we've not seen, I guess we've not seen this side of John very much, where he is, I mean, obviously what he was going through with the guy he loved from last season, it was a bit different because, yeah, he wanted to save him, but he couldn't because it's something that he did in the past and it's something he regretted. But this is something where he feels personally responsible for what happened to Astra. So it is kind of interesting to see him so, I guess, involved and, what's the word I'm looking for? Not engaged, passionate, I guess is the right word. Like, he's very passionately going after Astra and trying to not just stop her but bring her back too, because I mean, honestly, I really did expect him, when he got down there again with the gun that could just kill her, I expected him to pull the trigger, because that's kind of what we've seen from Constantine, and especially after everything that happened with Jeannie and with Bugsy, I did expect him to just say, you know what, screw it. What you've done, it's not worth trying to save you. All the lives that are going to be ruined, it's not worth it. But he decided, no, I'm better than that. And it does give him a little bit more depth as a character, because he's not just the type to pull the trigger just to stop it all and make it simple. He does want to save her, and he does feel responsible for her. So it does give this story a lot more depth and a lot more intrigue going forward. I think that's about it for this episode, though. There are a couple things that just didn't really go anywhere. Like the cop that suddenly turned on Ray because he was apparently in league with the mobsters or whatever. I don't know if he was specifically working for Bugsy or if he was working for another mob gang, and that's why he hated. Because when he was talking to Ray in the police station, he was like, "Yeah, I can't believe he just get whatever he wants." So I don't know if that was an act or if he's angry because he was working for another mob family, but that whole story didn't really go anywhere, because Jeannie still died anyway. And then it was kind of funny because when Ray shows up next to John, my first thought is, well, that's a plot hole. He just got out of the handcuffs. And then they start walking away, and you see Ray holding the steering wheel with the handcuffs still attached because he just ripped it off. I was like, okay. Brilliant little visual gag right after the death of somebody. Again, kind of a dark humor filled show at times, because we have that joke right after witnessing a woman get blown to bits. That's kind of what I expect for this show. But yeah, Zari being on the ship, though, that's kind of what it ends off on. I will say the editing was a little weird, because we go from her screaming help to Ava sitting in the chair singing Poison drunkenly, sleepily, and then back to Zari screaming help, and it was very awkwardly edited. I don't know if they were trying to say, oh, that girl's poison, Zari's gonna be poison, guys, because she's a media influencer. So typically, they show her being one of the ones that are just all about the fame and the popularity and like, oh, my followers are so cool. So I don't know if they're implying that she's gonna be an issue with the team. I don't know. Just, again, it seemed like a weird edit, and it definitely was weird when they held on her screaming help, like zoomed in on her face. Not really a great shot, but yeah, we'll see what's gonna come next. But on to the third one. See you there. And now episode 4, Slay Anything. So right after I talked about how great it is to have Constantine on the team, of course he goes off and does his own thing. But even though that is the case, it's still pretty interesting to see him really have to go into a bit more of a, I guess, personal battle. He does meet up with Charlie, which I didn't say anything, but there was a thought at the beginning of this episode. I was kind of like, wait a minute. We've not seen Charlie since she just took off in episode 1. Interesting. So, yeah, the fact that she's just sort of hanging out here pretending to be Constantine is kind of funny. But yeah, I don't know. Apparently he's going to see Astra's dead mother, who's a witch. It's an interesting story. So, it's got my focus. I want to know more. I am a little disappointed that I'm not going to see him riffing off the team, but at least they've given him something to do that I feel like is going to keep me interested and keep me engaged. So, but this overall, probably my favorite episode so far. And I even think I mentioned something like this at the end of last season, where I talked about what if they brought back like some serial killers and stuff, and we know Ava knows all about serial killers. They didn't bring back an actual one. They brought back one from, I'll have to actually look this up later and see if this is an actual like DC, because he apparently went to Central City High. So I don't know if they pulled this character from the comics or if they just made him up for this episode, but he's a serial killer, and so of course Ava knows all about his story, but not all about it. And I did like that little twist where it turns out to be it's actually his mother that went and killed all of these people because they were taking her baby boy away from her. And on top of that, the way they mistreated him as well. Yeah, it was a nice little twist, so that way it wasn't completely everything that we thought it was going to be. And I like some of the moments in this. You have the good line from Ava and Sarah, "We're the final girls!" That's great, especially because I actually have a friend who's very much into horror movies, and she's writing one of her own, and she's told me about this whole, like, I'm not really much of a horror movie person, but she's told me about the whole, like, final girl trope, and how she wants to play with that. So I like the fact that we got a little reference to that, because this really was set up very much like a slasher horror film. Like, you got a killer in a school going around killing people, and also has telekinetic powers. I am I don't know. I'm kind of curious why some of them are ending up with certain powers. Like Rasputin apparently had the ability to hypnotize people, which kind of goes along with who he was, because I mean he was a mentalist kind of. I know he had the ability to hypnotize, basically get inside people's minds, but they actually like gave him, like, he had the little bauble thing that could just literally take over somebody's mind and control them. So it was almost like expanding his hypnosis into an actual legitimate power, and more so than just able to play with people's minds. And then Bugsy, he got the gun that shot Hellfire, which I guess also sort of relates to him in a way, because gangsters, mobsters back then, they would rain hellfire down with guns and bullets and all of that. So kind of fits that theme, that idea. But for her, the reason she gets telekinetic powers, I don't know. Like, I don't know if they'll talk about why they're getting certain powers. Obviously, none of them are killable. They're all invincible. But the fact that each of them are getting powers that maybe tie into who they are. I don't know if somebody specifically in hell is giving them these powers when they send them back, or again, if they're just magnifying something about them specifically that turns into they now have some sort of supernatural power. I don't know if we'll get more of an explanation of that, or if I'm just supposed to know already. No, they're just basically amplifying something about them. But again, for the mom here, I don't know why she gets telekinetic abilities from returning from hell here. I don't really understand that. It actually would have made more sense if she came back with like electrokinesis or something like that, because I mean her son was zapped on the electric chair, so it would kind of make more sense in that realm. But to get telekinetic powers, I just don't see the connection there. But I mean, yeah, just everything to do with what she's doing in the school. It was kind of terrifying to watch. I mean, the one girl gets thrown into a locker and then gets crushed inside the locker. Pretty dark. It's pretty dark. And I mean, not that this show has not had dark moments. I mean, I think about the unicorn completely wrecking people last season was extremely dark and out of nowhere. Just, oh, their hearts are gone. Cool. But yeah, I don't know. It just, I like the feel of this because it was set up very much like kind of a slasher film. And the fact that they played with a bit of the present, or actually not even the present, it was like 2004 and then the past in the 80s. I like that element as well because there were definitely a lot of good callbacks and a lot of good moments between the two. As well, I mean, Nora also got a really good story in this. She's obviously been going around doing her fairy godmother stuff, but we see her complaining about it in this one because every kid just wants a pony, and that's all she really deals with. Is she finds these kids that need something and they feel like they're in desperate need of something, and then they're just like, I want a pony, and she's just like, yep, I mean, it's not going to fix your problems, but sure, here you go. So it was nice for her to get a moment where she did actually help. Why is his name escaping me? Freddy. There it is. She actually got a chance to help Freddy more than just give him what he wants, actually give him what he needs. And that's really what came through for her in this one. And it was a nice moment for her when she finally got that moment where Freddy hugged her and she realized she really did help him. And then he gets to be with Tiffany later on. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it was a really nice moment. It was not one I expected to get for Nora because I wasn't even sure if we were going to see her much this season because she is out doing her fairy godmother stuff. So the fact that we got some good character growth for her and a good story, I was happy with it. So Mick and his story, I mean, Mick always tends to be the comic relief, and here's no different. He meets a high school fling that he had something with, but then he went to juvie so he couldn't see her, and then now they're back together, and then she gets killed, and he gets killed, but then they're brought back after they stopped the mom in the past, and then they're, of course, finishing they're finishing. You know what I mean by that. I mean that in every sense of the word. So it's just, I don't know. It was a nice, funny story as well for him. What else? Oh, Zari's story. That's right. So obviously Zari being on the time ship, she doesn't remember anything about the Wave Rider, but she does have a moment where she suddenly gets a glimpse of hacking into the computer, and she bypasses Gideon's, I guess, anti-hack software or whatever it was, and manages to get out. So there is some memory of the previous timeline left. I don't know what this is going to lead to. I don't know if they're just doing all of this basically to get Nate and Zari back together after last season. And if so, I don't know how I feel about that, honestly. Because it felt like they made a sacrifice last season because they needed to save the world. So if they're basically just going to go back on that by having Nate and Zari reconnect in this new timeline, and they remember the old one, and they're like, oh, I remember who you are now, and I remember who you are. It just feels like last season's sacrifice now doesn't mean anything. And I don't know, I hate it whenever TV shows and movies do this. You know, Frozen 2 was very guilty of that, where it's like, oh, the sacrifice that they're making means they're going to lose the town, and suddenly Elsa's like, nope, haha, no consequences for our actions, guys. We get to keep everything, even though we really shouldn't. And that's kind of what this felt like here. You know, it's something they needed to do to basically save the world, and now all of a sudden it's like, nope, never mind. We're gonna recant that and bring them back together because I don't know. Nate and Zari's love story is so great, and it really, I mean, none of the love stories on the show are really fantastic. They're all okay. Some of them are funny, some of them are sweet, some of them are average. Nate and Zari was just sort of, they're okay. They had some good moments, but it's not like I'm sitting here really upset about the fact that Nate and Zari aren't a couple anymore. So the fact that they're just focusing on bringing them back together, I'm just not completely on board for. But I don't know. I guess we'll see what they do with it. Maybe they'll do something interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think that's about it. Zari's story with her brother as well. Also pretty fun and interesting, you know, seeing them sort of reconnect and being okay with being around each other. I like that. It was well written. I think that's all I can really think of. So, yeah, all in all, very good episode. And these first 3 episodes so far have kicked off the season very well. Obviously, getting Mona off the show is the first great step in the right direction for me. But overall, I mean, the humor, it's been hit or miss so far, but it's been solid. It's been funny. It's got me laughing. The story, still, I still want to see a bit more. I still want to see a bit more focus on what we're doing, how we're going to stop Astra, how we're going to stop all of these encores that they're calling them. Which, there is a part of me that's like, I guess I get it. But the fact that Mona's the one that came up with it does sort of make me go, hate the fact that we're using her suggestion. But, I mean, it's a good setup so far. I'm loving the fact that we're getting to see some of history's greatest baddies. And then, of course, they're throwing in some fake historical figures as well, which is fine. But I would have loved if we could have gotten, like, a real-life serial killer, like a Ted Bundy or the Zodiac Killer even. Of course, if they did that, they would have to talk about who the Zodiac Killer actually was, and nobody really knows. They might throw in a Ted Cruz joke, I don't know. But, yeah, just, I don't know. I like where it's going so far. I'm having more fun, definitely more fun than I did last season. So, yeah. That's about it for these 3. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these 3 episodes? Let me know what we could talk about and discuss, all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Legends of Tomorrow reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.